Sonic 06, the most controversial Sonic game of all. Considered by some as one of the worst games ever made, but considered by others as a not so bad game. But today, we are not going to discuss how good the game is. Today, I'll show you the cut content, the betas, the demos, the secrets and the things that you probably didn't know about the game. Most of the stuff covered is already documented on the Sonic Wiki, Sonic Retro, the Cutting Room Floor and Hidden Palace, so this video is for those of you who are too lazy to do the research yourselves. I also recommend checking out Cybershell's bonus videos on Sonic 1, 2, 3 and Sonic CD, as that's where I got the video and title idea from. Much like the Sonic Heroes bonus video I made, I had a lot of doubts on where to start, as Sonic 06 has a lot of scrapped content due to its time constraints and troubled development. With that said, let's start by covering the cut content, as there's a lot to uncover. Various different difficulties were planned for most stages. The final game only uses the normal and hard options, with very hard being used in the DLC, but there is a super hard difficulty menu option that goes completely unused. There are some debugging features found in the game. With this, you can access an unused animated title screen referred internally as dev title. Pressing start will take you to a debug menu that unfortunately no longer renders, but is still functional. The sprite data was found for this a while ago, but its functionality has been somewhat restored through hacking. All characters support unused debug modules referred as debug wait, which allows you to fly around in noclip. In the first in-game cutscene for Sonic's episode, we see a version of Soliana that's completely different to the terrain you actually get to play around in. The event ID for this cutscene is E0031 and has its own separate terrain folder from Soliana's actual one, containing models and textures that are different. The textures used in E0031 appear to be early counterparts, as they are missing some text and effects, but are also set up correctly, unlike Soliana's final textures. This texture was modified to add the word cafe for Soliana. This texture was made darker, but was modified to add the number 15 for Soliana. And these textures had Gaussian blur added to a portion of the texture for where it be mapped over a shop window. There are several assets, models and NPCs that go unused. Sonic usually only has one texture on his mouth in-game, where he grins. However, there exist two more unused expressions that were intended to be used alongside his different facial animations. The first has him smiling more enthusiastically and showing some teeth, similarly to his render in Sonic Heroes. This was intended to accompany the squinting animation used during Sonic's run animation and some of his moves. A similar texture was used on Sonic's face in the TGS 2005 teaser for this game. The second expression is for frowning. It's very similar to Shadow's mouth texture, but he uses the one in his own archive. This was intended for Sonic's idle animation. Here is an unused model of the jump panel identical to the one used in Sonic Unleashed and onwards. The final game uses the same jump panel model from Sonic Heroes and Shadow the Hedgehog, but this model's presence seems to suggest the Unleashed design was supposed to be introduced here. Two loading screens from the E3 demo can be found in a folder containing result screen assets. They were intended to be overlaid on top of the empty striped box in the upper left corner. Note that both of them state "head for a goal ring." Several graphics related to an early version of multiplayer mode still exist in the game's data. Note that these graphics go up to 4 players, but the final game's multiplayer only allows 2 players, and only lets you pick between 3 characters, Sonic, Shadow and Silver, implying more characters, such as the various Amigo characters, were able to be picked earlier in development. Some of these HUD icons are not used in the game. The first 7 gems are normally obtainable, however the rainbow colored one is not. Originally, there was going to be a gem that could be purchased at the store which would allow you to play as Super Sonic in more than just the final stage, similar to how it was in Sonic 2, Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles whenever all 7 Chaos Emeralds were collected. This said, the item can still be accessed through hacking, but isn't fully functional. All it does is make Sonic perform a transformation animation and float in place for a few seconds, with no effect otherwise. The icons that clearly don't fit in a texture named gem.dds are more fit for collectibles or missions. There is an unused HUD element that acts as a counter for bronze medals, despite actually using the silver medal icon seen here. The blue arrows could suggest a lap count for races. The flat shaded ring could be for past rings and missions. The head could be related to NPCs that the player must guide. The dog could be related to dogs that the player must guide. The E would have been used for multiplayer as an enemy counter. The star could be related to the goal ring, as it uses the exact same shape and shading as the one seen inside its model. These images are displayed on the warp gates that appear on the Soliana map, among which are levels that do not have warp gates, such as Crisis City and Flame Core, bearing the normally inaccessible, non-functioning ones in the early New City. These grind paths for Soliana are left over in the game's placement files, referred to as Grindtown A and Grindtown B respectively, both of which are never used in the retail game, possibly due to being both buggy and out of place. Castletown's paths can break into a mess for some rails, which is unfortunate, as well as New City's paths clipping through collision. In one of the models for the town stage's humans, there is a model for a thief and his bag that did not make it into gameplay. They may have been implemented for missions such as Town Mission 9 Chase the Fleeing Car, but were simply rejected. The thief can be restored by editing spawn rate file. After that, he walks with or without the bag around New City like a regular NPC. The painter model script and textures can be found among the files of other NPCs, but are not used. One of his textures is an oil painting of Castle Town featuring Sonic. He can be restored by editing spawn rate file. The painter was supposed to stay in the corner of New City Dock and watch the sea. He cannot be found as Sonic, and his dialogue for Silver and Shadow is the same. Dogs can be found sitting in several places in Castle Town, but they were also supposed to walk around the New City. They can be enabled by editing spawn rate file, the same way one can spawn pigeons in New City. Instead of walking, they slowly float above the ground. In the final version there is only one pigeon, Hatsune. Inside Radical Train's files in the game, there exists a switch-like model. It resembles ones that are used to switch between movable rails, being composed of a gauge and a lever like in real life. While what it was supposed to do is unknown, if this model is to be used through hacking in gameplay, it acts as an usable item that can be picked up by psychokinesis. An unused pedestrian traffic light model is found among Town Stages files. This model was most likely going to be used in sync with the unused cars rolling in New City, something that I will talk about further in the video. It even has a broken variant of it that would be displayed should it be struck by the player. There exists an unused object whose default values, when enabled, sets it as a present model with an unheard voice line, activated upon interacting with it. Once the player has interacted with it, Sonic says,
"The crest of Soliana and an eagle! I see!"
In the power-up items section of the game's manual, the shield is listed as an available power-up that can be obtained from item boxes, yet no shield power-up boxes are seen anywhere in-game. Despite this, the shield exists in the game's code and is fully functional, allowing the player to take a hit without losing their rings, though it doesn't play the activation sound like it should, and it doesn't cause the player to enter their hit animation, which would be somewhat disorienting. The shield can be placed in a level by changing an item box's parameter to 8. One of the most known scrapped features of Sonic 06 is that a day and night cycle was originally planned for the game, but was cut due to time constraints. This feature was shown during the TGS 2005 demo presentation of the game behind closed doors, and is evident during the first in-game cutscene of Sonic's story, where Sonic travels through Soliana at night. Originally, every character was going to have their own episodes, but the idea was scrapped from the final version. Metal Sonic was going to be an extra playable character as well, but it was also scrapped. Silver had more than one background concept done by Sonic Team. One was leaked from the Sonic Team in a XLS containing biographies of all the playable characters, along with scripts. Here, Silver is described as having a special power that can draw upon the Chaos Emeralds. The concept of his creation was based on Trunks from Dragon Ball Z according to the same profile. However, the profile of Silver was described as temporary, explaining why it was not used, while all the other profiles were later used in the official guides and on the game's websites. By swapping the character files of some of the Amigo mode characters with those of the regular characters, it is possible to view animations of some of the supporting characters that do not appear on the character selection screen. In the event folder of the game, the event titles for Sonic start with E0000 and increasing the least significant digit by 1. The other stories' event titles follow the same rule too, but the difference being the most significant digit larger than 0, the first event for Shadow's story being E1000, Silver's being E2000, and so on. However, this naming convention breaks 2 times in the folder with the naming pattern for the event files, jumping from E0024 and E1000 to E0026 and E1002 respectively, suggesting that there are 2 events missing, E0025 and E1001, for Sonic's and Shadow's storylines respectively. From the files, it is evident that the event E0025 is just after the cutscene Out of Control in Sonic's story, while event E1001 is just after Shadow's first cutscene. Interestingly, several unused lines for a conversation between Shadow and Rouge for the level White Acropolis seems to fit the purpose of the E1001 cutscene. In the game files, there is a very disturbing picture of Eggman without his glasses before he makes Team Sonic travel to the future. In the game files, there are a lot of pictures that are presumably used by Eggman on the Egg Carrier to locate the Chaos Emeralds. The maps included the errors that occurred on board the Egg Carrier before it crashed. The pictures also include renders of the Soliana newspapers that Sonic read upon his return to the present from Flame Core. Now let's get into some unused songs and audios. The game files hold a variation of His World without lyrics. It was the main menu track of the Xbox Live demo in September 2006. Other variations of this song can be heard at various points in the final game, such as in the main settings, multiplayer, and Solaris Phase 2. The game files hold the song Dreams of an Absolution without lyrics, which is different from the final version of the track. Despite not being able to normally finish a level, Knuckles has a proper level completion animation and a set of voiceovers for responding to his rank. Knuckles can finish both of the levels in which he is playable, Flame Core and Aquatic Base, with the use of glitches, allowing for these quotes to be heard.
Alright! That felt good. Well, that wasn't too bad. That took longer than I thought. Shoot! I've still got a ways to go.
And speaking of voiceovers that are normally not accessible, there is a stupid amount of voice clips that weren't used for the characters. These include 11 minutes of unused clips for Sonic, 8 minutes of unused clips for Tails, Rouge and Omega, 6 minutes of unused clips for Knuckles, 14 minutes of unused clips for Shadow, 10 minutes of unused clips for Silver, 7 minutes of unused clips for Blaze, and 4 minutes of unused clips for Amy. And more than an hour worth of other unused voice clips, sound effects, jingle stunts, quotes, etc. There is also a lot of hints and conversations that go unused, including the voice clips that go to these conversations. It's impossible for me to show all of them as it would take hours to do so. Some of them reveal gameplay aspects that were scrapped. One unused Sonic voice clip suggests that Sonic and Shadow were supposed to work together in Crisis City.
Shadow! Hang on, Shadow! It's gonna blow! Shadow was swept up into the tornado! I've gotta help him!
Now let's talk about some unused animations found in the game files. There are unused animations in the game files for Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Shadow and Silver. There are probably some for other characters too, but these were the easiest to find. I won't get into much detail as there are a ton of animations that go unused, so you can see in the screen some of my favorite unused animations, as well as some interesting ones. And with these unused animations out of the way, let's cover some of the game's unused objects. Again, I won't get into much detail because some of these aren't really that interesting, most of them are just some unused object placement. So I'll just make a brief coverage of some that interest me. There are unused ball puzzle models in Silver's Dusty Desert. There's a model of some stacked pipes in Silver's Crisis City that's never seen in game. In Sonic's Radical Train, you can actually see the Switch model I referenced earlier. And here is Silver using the psychokinesis on it. And here you can see an unused model of a damaged cargo on the train. In Sonic's Kingdom Valley, there are bugged particles that leave you absolutely blind if you go through the tunnel after walking on the wall. In Sonic's Aquatic base, there are some glass door textures that go unused. And for last, in the cut content section, let's cover the unused layouts for the stages in the game, as well as some beta screenshots. Surprisingly, all three layouts for the Tokyo Game Show 2006 version of Kingdom Valley are on the disc. Sonic seems to be identical to the XBLA Demo, while Shadows showcases some alternate hints. Using a glitch, Shadow can access New City before the Dusty Desert level is unlocked, when it is normally blocked off. Doing so reveals an early version of New City with several oddities. You can see vehicles that drive around, however their AI is unfinished and they often drive into buildings. A town mission that isn't available anywhere else in the game. Crisis City and Flame Core warp gates. In the normal game, these two levels don't have warp gates, however they cannot be entered. A pigeon NPC called Hatsune, normally only seen after Silver's 9th town mission, that the player can speak to. The brooding little creature has but one thing to say: "Cool." Using a glitch, Sonic can access the blocked portion of Soliana Castletown and enter Soliana Forest before the Wave Ocean level. Doing so reveals several oddities. The forest itself spawns a multitude of signs, including the no symbol, checkered strips, stop signs and speed limit designations. Interestingly, the checkered strips are used in a side quest, although positioned incorrectly, and both the stop sign and speed limit signs are subject to physics and can be destroyed with homing attacks. Only the stop sign is unused, but both it and the speed limit signs are a remnant of the cars planned for New City. 3 unused layouts for hard mode exist in the game's files. It's unknown why these went unused, as most stages in the final game have hard mode equivalents. An unused layout file for the B section of Sonic's Dusty Desert, though it doesn't quite align with the stage model correctly. Sonic's stage is rather short and would have benefited from another section. Mirroring Sonic's unused layout for this level, Silver has an unused layout file for the A section. Silver does actually go through part of the A section during End of the World, but that uses a different layout. The game contains a layout file with the name CSC_D_Sonic, and it is possible to load it into the second section of Crisis City, but the objects spawn far off from the stage's starting point. The actual terrain and collision files that went with this have long since been removed or edited into something that no longer matches up with this. The presence of a planned but scrapped section to Crisis City would explain the XMA file oddities it exhibits. A test level that can be loaded by modifying internal files, which can be downloaded for Xbox 360 in the video's description. It's intended specifically for Shadow and is in a directory containing other test levels. The actual stage mesh doesn't exist, so the one in the video was recreated based on the collision map, and this is included in the download. The area itself contains vehicles, a grind SP line and a few item boxes, in addition to enemies. The layout used at E3 2006 for Silver's Crisis City is still present on the disc, one of the surprisingly few E3 leftovers. In this screenshot, Kingdom Valley is quite different from the final version. There are multiple unknown areas that appeared in the prototype images which were not seen in the final version, some with different placements of the enemies and more ring trails for the Lightspeed dash. Crisis City varies greatly between its prototype pictures and its finalized version. The action stage originally held Eggman's mechs, instead of Iblis minions, and included sections that were cut from the final version. Also, the prominent tornado is still included, but is made of dust instead of flames. The early promotional images showcasing the fighting arena of the battle against Sonic and vice versa shows that the battle arena was going to have steel containers and explosive crates in it. And that's most of the cut content covered. Now let's cover the differences between demos and trailers and the final game. I'll cover the 2006 Xbox Live demo, the TGS 2005 demo, the E3 demo and trailer, and the review build. As for the trailers and demos, I'm not going to show you all of the entire footage, so if you want to check them out, there will be links in the description. I'll only cover the differences that interest me the most. Let's analyze the 2006 Xbox Live demo first, starting by the general differences. There are different enemies, item placement, and no medals. Rings are dispersed in a wider circle when Sonic is hit. Sonic immediately respawns after losing a life. The screen will not black out. Most trails of rings can be used for the Lightspeed dash. The camera control is much slower than in the final version. The action gauge starts out empty, but it can be filled by defeating enemies. However, it feels much slower than in the final version. The homing attack is affected by gravity. Now for the visual and sound differences. The title screen uses one of the last riffs from His World instead of the song's introduction. The controls are shown on the action stage's loading screen in the demo. The music and the screen will not fade out after losing the last life. There are no flashy effects for the speed dash. The bound jump's shockwave is mostly white with yellow edges instead of blue in the demo. Surfing on the wind paths in the demo does not produce the appearance of wind debris being stirred up from the character's feet. There is no music for the result screen, although there are unused result music in the demo files. There is also an unused invisible/speed up theme. Now let's cover the TGS 2005 demo. The gameplay of Sonic 06 was first shown at TGS 2005 in a prototype stage. A number of differences were present due to the early stage of the game's development. The shoes on Sonic's model were shinier and the surroundings are reflected in their surface. Sonic's animations are slightly different. In the demo, the game is running slower due to how early in development it was. Despite this, Sonic goes extremely fast while grinding. The wooden containers do not have stars on them, unlike in the final game. Debug functions were used in the demo that did not make it into the final version, including FreeCam and levitation. A day and night cycle could be used via debug controls that were built in. Sonic seems to aim directly into the ground when using the homing attack, unlike in the final version of the game where he jump dashes instead. Sonic's victory pose is different. Here he gives a thumbs up with the Sonic Heroes victory music playing in the background. Kingdom Valley also ends earlier because the action stage had not been finished at that time. Now let's cover the E3 demo and trailer. The E3 demo, containing both Sonic's Kingdom Valley and Silver's Crisis City, has several differences from the final version, and the trailer showcased there. The first section of Kingdom Valley is similar to that of the final version, except when Sonic grabs the eagle, it takes him to the super speed stage, and not to Silver's section like in the final version. The loading screen depicts a blue screen with the action stage's name and the objective at the bottom, rather than an image of the action stage with control tutorials like in the final version. The now loading text also fades away instead of disappearing completely. The HUD is different, featuring a Sonic head for the character icon. Sonic's action gauge is also not used. Blaze's section was not included in Demo's version of Crisis City. In the demo, Sonic's homing attack works differently. When using it, he falls to the floor instead of dashing through mid-air. He also has multiple different animations for flips among other things, which are used with the white gem in the final version. Kingdom Valley has a big blue sky rather than an overcast one in the final game. When the goal ring is touched, the game does not freeze to load data like in the final version. It also depicts a mission completed text. In the demo, Crisis City has Eggman's robots instead of Iblis minions as enemies. In the demo, there are a few grammar errors in the dialogues. The characters as text boxes are simply black rectangles, unlike in the final version. Crisis City and Kingdom Valley's background music are different in the demo. And for last, let's talk a little bit about the review build. A special edition of the game was compiled about 10 hours before the retail one. It was used by various game journalists, including the authors of the official Prima guide. A Sonic Retro user obtained the disc, however, it was severely corrupted. Restored content is almost identical to that of the retail build, except for unnecessary stage file copies and the executable file. This file references this folder, which implies review build was known as version 2.0 and was developed separately. This build is currently being restored. And that's all for the demos and trailers. Now let's get into the trivia. Although Sonic 06, unlike Sonic Extreme, was released, the final product was likewise far from finished from the get-go. After Yuji Naka, one of the founding members of the Sonic franchise and a long-time member of the Sonic Team production POS, resigned from Sega and consequently left ongoing development of the game. Massive pressure was then put on the game's director Shun Nakamura and the rest of the development team to have the game, which was supposed to be another great Sonic game that would be used to help relaunch the franchise on next-gen consoles, finished in time for that year's Christmas season, as well as be released before year's end to qualify as the 15th anniversary title. And then, if that wasn't enough, the development team was split so that a new team could work on a new Sonic game for the Wii console, the result of Sega discovering that a Wii version of the game, which was in development along with the PS3 and 360 versions, was unfeasible due to the Wii's technical limitations. The fact that they had to develop two remaining console versions of the game at the same time during the short development process did not help matters. The final product was ravaged by reviewers and fans alike as one of the worst video games ever, and, contrary to popular belief, sold poorly, though for what it's worth, the 360 version still sold well enough to warrant a Platinum Family Hits reprint, but that probably didn't do much to help, which was enough to have some dire consequences of the franchise. The final result was a game that left a black mark on the series and Sega's reputation forever, and one of the most infamous video games ever made. During Shadow's storyline, Shadow is given an order to go to Wave Ocean. During this, you can hear the actor flub his line and repeat it again.
Agent Shadow, E123 Omega has engaged methods. Head to the Wave Ocean, head to Wave Ocean. Agent Shadow, E123 Omega has engaged methods. Head to Wave Ocean immediately.
In 2010, Sega delisted Sonic 06 as a downloadable title from the Xbox Live Marketplace because they felt the game was harming the Sonic brand by being available for purchase. Silver's theme song Dreams of an Absolution is an unintentional remix of Green Hill Zone's theme music. The songwriter said he didn't realize he had mixed the music into the song.
And I might know about future, but then you still control the past. Only you know if you'll be together. Only
The game manual states that Tails and Omega can only fly until their flight meter depletes to 0. Neither character has a visible flight meter, and Omega can't even fly, only hover. Finally, the manual also states that by collecting Chaos Drives and Light Cores, Sonic can level up his equipped abilities. There are no level up mechanics in the game, and Chaos Drives do not make an appearance. Pete Capella originally auditioned as Shadow, but the casting director thought he would be a good voice for a brand new character, thus becoming the first voice for Silver the Hedgehog.
Shadow, you want to watch a game trailer with me?
Hip-hop artist Akon has established a remix to the original song Sweet 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 from the Sega Genesis title Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for this game. The remix is now titled Sweet 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 06 Akon Mix as the ending theme.
이 사람은
As I said earlier, this was the last title in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise to be produced by franchise conceiver Yuji Naka, whom had left midway through the project and thus was not credited for his involvement in the game's development. Silver the Hedgehog wasn't initially designed as a hedgehog, but rather an orange mink. English dubbing began before the game script could be finalized. As a result, there are several dialogue to subtitle inconsistencies. The Scepter of Darkness that imprisoned the new villain Mephiles had gone through multiple changes in just these few months, first being referred to as the Tears of the Sun, then the Book of Darkness, before finally becoming the Scepter of Darkness.
Agent Rouge, report your status immediately. Have you retrieved the Book of Darkness? Book of Darkness. Book of Darkness.
Well...
Silver's character is highly inspired by the character Trunks from the manga series Dragon Ball Z. This is also affirmed in the character list of the game's script. During the development of Sonic 06, the Hedgehog engine was conceptualized by Yoshihisa Hashimoto. Yoshihisa Hashimoto, who had been hired on as an enemy programmer for Sonic Adventure after college, was assigned as the director for the next big Sonic game in 2005. He had worked on the past several Sonic games, and after analyzing past mistakes, decided what needed to be done to move this series forward. His team began working on the Hedgehog engine in 2005, and spent the next 3 years in development. They planned on licensing the engine so that other companies could pay for use of the technology. This technology would be used in future Sonic games, such as Sonic Unleashed, Generations and Lost World, but also other Sega games, such as Phantasy Star Online 2. It was believed that, at some point, Sonic 06 would take advantage of the Hedgehog engine, but, as you know, that didn't happen, most likely because the engine wasn't anything remotely close to finished when Sonic 06 launched. Silver is from the future, while Blaze is from an alternate dimension. The explanation for her presence in the future is that apparently the two of them got amnesia, as do everyone else. The English voice actress Veronica Taylor was intended to do the voice of Princess Elise III. She even recorded all her lines for the game, but for unknown reasons she was replaced by Lacey Chabert. Even in an interview with GameSpy, they ask her, "Did the people at Sega tell you why they wanted you for this role?" "They just told me that they thought my voice was appropriate for the character." The word Iblis, which is used as the name for one of the game's bosses, is an Arabic word, Iblis, which translates as devil. In the cutscene where Sonic returns to Soliana from the future, the newspaper he picks up has the title misspelled as Daily Soriana. The game was originally envisioned by Sega to be a reboot to the entire franchise, and to build a game similar to the Adventure series, fearing that the previous Sonic Heroes and Shadow the Hedgehog had made the series stray too far. This also explains the realistic art direction that the game took, along with certain character interactions that don't make any sense. And for last, and I couldn't make this video without referencing this, there is a PC port of Sonic 06 being made by developer Chaos X called Project 06 or P06. This is a faithful recreation of Sonic 06, but with more quality of life improvements, better graphics, less glitches and many more features. As I'm saying this, all of the Sonic stages are available, as are the Shadow ones. Silver's stages have not yet been released, although it is possible to play as him in some of Sonic's and Shadow's stages. Also, boss fights and the story mode are not finished yet, but you should definitely try it out, because it is really well made and really fun to play, although some things could be changed, like the developer's opinion on Sonic Heroes. And that's all I have for this video. This has been a really hard and tiring video to make. I have been doing this for over a year now, so I hope you enjoyed watching it. I've made a video like this one for Sonic Heroes, so if you are interested in watching it, feel free to do so. If you have any suggestion of a Sonic game I should cover next, feel free to comment down below.